Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to today's broadcast of the Cod Times. This is Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, coming to you today, as I do every Tuesday, from the studios of the Audible Local Ledger here in Deer Crossing in Mashpee, Massachusetts. I'd like to welcome you today to the first, really, in terms of temperature and sunshine, the first really legitimate spring day that we have had so far, and let's hope for many more. Temperatures are right around 70 degrees, or will be soon, with bright sunshine, and that's a real boost to your attitude and the way you greet the day. At least for me it is. So I am so happy to see finally a good spring day. As I mentioned earlier, this is Tuesday, April 14th, and once again the week has flown by, as it seemingly does every week and every day. Maybe it's just the fact when you get older, the time goes by so very quickly. Anyhow, with that little introduction, let's get to a look at the weather, not only for today, but throughout the week for the South Shore and the Cape and Islands. Today, we're going to have a high of 71 degrees, warmer at times, with some clouds and sun. So 70 degrees, welcome to you. Tonight, 51 degrees will be an overnight low. We're done with those 20s and 30s, folks, so you can rejoice with that. Overnight low 51 with some showers around a bit early in the evening, and clouds are breaking up to show a partial visible moon. Tomorrow, another 70-degree day with 72 degrees as a high. Warm, I would say so, with intervals of clouds and sunshine. An overnight low of 54 degrees. Thursday and Friday, Mr. Sunshine returns in full glory with mostly sun and some intervals of clouds on both days. A high on Thursday of 68 degrees and Friday 69. And then come Saturday, we take a little dip in the temperature, but still should be very pleasant, with a daylight high of 59 degrees and an overnight low of 49. So other than a little bit of rain, possibly this evening, later in the evening, we are seeing mostly days with mostly sunshine and highs in the high 60s and low 70s, except for Saturday when it's 59 degrees. Taking a look at some temperatures, these will be highs, folks, around the South Shore and Cape today. We have a 77, if you can believe that, 77 degrees in Plymouth, 73 in Buzzards Bay, and 75 on the coast at Wareham. Now we cross the canal onto the Cape, where we have 74 in Bourne and Sandwich, 75 today as a high in Falmouth, 69 in Mashpee, 76 in Barnstable, 75 in Dennis, 71 is a high in Hyannis along the water. Out at the elbow of the Cape, 68 at Chatham, 75 at Dennis, 75 at Brewster, 71 is a high at Nossa, 68 at Truro, and Provincetown out at Race Point Light. It's 70 degrees today. Water temperatures. Cape Cod Bay, it's elevating ever so slowly. It's at 42 degrees today with wave heights only 1 to 2 feet and wind direction of south-southwest at 7 to 14 knots. If you want to swim, swimming is better in Nantucket Sound, as you might expect. That's the high water temperature of 49 degrees. Wave heights out there a little steeper at 3 to 5 feet, and wind direction southwest at 8 to 16 knots. Okay, let's head out to the islands, going first to Martha's Vineyard, where we have a high of 68 degrees at Oak Bluffs today, where you'd get off the ferry, and 69 degrees at Edgartown. A little further east, out to Nantucket, we will have a high today there of 67 degrees, and at Secaucet, 62. And, as I said before, mostly sunny with breaks in clouds today, and a pretty nice week, except for the possibility of showers later this evening. You're going to see a lot of old Mr. Sun, and we are certainly giving him a warm welcome. All right, friends, without further ado, let's now go to page 1 of today's Tuesday edition, April 14th of the Cape Cod Times, and look first for articles of local, regional, or state interest, and then we'll move into articles of national interest. This first article of local interest is the headline article, and it says, Clean Water or Some New Building? ? On Cape Cod, votes further protect a drinking water source. This article is by Heather McCarran of the Cape Cod Times Network, and it has a picture of Falmouth, or of the canal near Falmouth. It says Falmouth Town Meeting members approved 2 articles on April 7th that placed 19 town-owned parcels under Permanent Conservation Commission oversight. The parcels are around and near the Long Pond surface water reservoir. So that's evidently what that is, not the canal in the picture, a key source of town drinking water. Here's the article, friends, with, of course, a dateline of Falmouth. For Jason Cullinane, the woods around Long Pond were a landscape of summers, adventures, and discovery, a world he knew as a teen before realizing its future was still undecided. I spent my high school years roaming throughout those woods, believing that they were protected. It was a shock when I learned that they were not, said Cullinane, a Precinct 6 town meeting member, adding that the possibility that at some point in the future they could be developed, that's a horrible idea as far as I'm concerned. Fellow town meeting members at the second town meeting session on April the 7th agreed, approving 2 articles, placing a total of 19 town-owned parcels under Permanent Conservation Commission oversight. Both measures passed by voice vote. Cullinane's perspective framed the discussion as members considered the transfers, which focused on land around and near the Long Pond surface water reservoir, a key source of town drinking water. Supporters said the votes would secure the watershed while also protecting the woodlands. This is the opportunity that we have now to say that these will never be developed, Cullinane said. Let me ask you, what do you need? Clean water or some new building? A new building can be built somewhere else. So protected land forms a ring now around Long Pond. The first measure, which the Select Board put forth as Article 23, focused on a single parcel at 484 Brick Kiln Road. The site was eyed for the new police station that's in the midst of a design process and slated for funding votes in the fall. But town officials ended up choosing a different site for the facility at 100 Brick Kiln Road. The second measure, brought by petition as Article 24, goes even further. It covers 19 parcels, including 484 Brick Kiln Road. Together, the parcels form a ring of protection around the pond, bracketed by Brick Kiln Road, Gifford Street, and Route 28, with Goodwill Park at the south end. Petitioners, led by Precinct 1 member Vicki Lowell, said recent research into property deeds and plans drove their effort. While many of the deeds referenced watershed protection, not all were clearly or consistently protected. Town Council had advised that most of the land was already protected under state law, but petitioners argue that placing all 19 parcels under the Conservation Commission would remove any uncertainty and to ensure consistent long-term protection. Supporters said their research revealed a long history of town land acquisition around the pond that all emphasized protecting the watershed. What we found was that for over 100 years, the town has been doggedly acquiring land between Brick Kiln Road, Gifford Street, and Route 128/Palmer Avenue for one specific purpose, that is, protecting the Long Pond watershed, where 2/3 of our drinking water comes from, said Eric Turkington, Precinct 1 member, and one of the petitioners, as he explained during the discussion. He said it was challenging to uncover the history of some of the land acquisitions, some of which were gifted to the town since they predated assessors' records. Turkington also read from a 100-year-old recommendation the Committee on Protection of Long Pond Watershed had written, which stated, quote, "Your committee is of the unanimous opinion that it is very desirable and necessary to acquire these parcels of land to continue the work of acquiring sufficient land around the pond to adequately protect it from the possibility of any future nuances." Precinct 9 member Joe Netto said the town meeting should respect the efforts of their predecessors and take steps to ensure protection of the watershed with no loose ends. 100 years ago, with no development in town at that time, they felt that this watershed should be protected, and they purchased most of the land around it, he said. So would conservation restrictions limit Falmouth's options? That statement leads us into the next paragraph. Others at the meeting urged caution, arguing that committing the land, already protected by town ownership and deeds, to difficult-to-reverse conservation restrictions now could limit options for future municipal land needs if others fall through, including the proposed police station. If we do not pass the police station at 100 Brick Hill Road, we don't have another viable location in the town of Falmouth this time, said Precinct 6 member Mike DeFaney, who was also on the Police Station Advisory Committee, asking that the conservation plan be indefinitely postponed. Precinct 4 member Todd DeFaney agreed with that comment. We still have a chance to utilize this land for something else down the road that we don't now know, he said, arguing that restricting so many parcels under conservation makes it far more difficult in the event the town needs to swap out other already protected parcels for municipal needs. Under Article 97 of the State Public Lands Preservation Act, a no net loss policy requires that any land removed from protection under its provisions must be replaced with land of similar fair market resource value. That, according to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Removing land from the conservation protection also requires a 2/3 approval of both houses of the state legislature. Selectman Colin Reed emphasized that the board did not take the decision to endorse transferring the parcel at 484 Brick Hill Road to conservation lightly, but ultimately agreed on its greater importance as a conserved tract. This is about protecting our water supply and the land that surrounds it, he said. We cannot compromise that, and the select board voted in favor of protecting that. The newly transferred lands joined 4 previously protected tracts, including 2 that were already under Conservation Commission jurisdiction and 2 under the care of the 300 Committee Land Trust. Lowell noted that the parcels could still be used for water resources purposes. The measures did not include the water treatment plant land or Goodwill Park, which Lowell said are managed in other ways. So there you have it, friends, the action and efforts undergoing to protect the parcels of land surrounding Long Pond in Falmouth in an effort to conserve the drinking water source for years to come. All right, let's move on. Our next article here on page 1 of today's Tuesday, the 14th of April, Cape Cod Times, has this headline: Vineyard Wind and GE clash over the project. Just underneath that title, there's a picture of a worker there at a site. Vineyard Wind CEO Klaus Muller tours the landfall area in Centerville for the project's second of 2 offshore power cables that were pulled onshore through a trench under the parking lot at Covell Beach. Okay, the lawsuit filed to keep contractors from leaving. This article was written by Heather McCarran of the Cape Cod Times Network, and here it is. Vineyard Wind is now at the center of a high-stakes legal disagreement as it asks a judge to step in quickly to keep GE Renewables, a key contractor, from walking away just as the 806-megawatt project off the shores of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard is expected to begin full operations. In a 22-page filing submitted April 8th in Suffolk Superior Court, Vineyard Wind said turbine and blade supplier GE Renewables is threatening to end its contract, a move that the company says could derail the entire project and leave behind a dormant wind farm graveyard. The developer is asking the court for two things: to rule that GE has no legal right to terminate its contract, and to issue an emergency order to block GE from doing so while the dispute is resolved. A hearing was set on this matter for April the 16th. That will be Thursday of this week. At the heart of the dispute is this basic question: does Vineyard Wind owe GE money, or does GE actually owe Vineyard Wind? GE asserts that, I'm assuming that it stands for General Electric, GE asserts that it hasn't been paid certain milestone payments under a 2021 turbine supply contract. Based on that, it issued a notice to Vineyard Wind saying it may terminate its turbine supply agreement and its service and maintenance agreement on April 28th. In its filing, Vineyard Wind, a joint venture of Avangrid Renewables and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, called GE's claim frivolous and argues that it has legally withheld payments on purpose and is allowed to do so under the various signed contracts. In a declaration included with the court filing, Vineyard Wind CEO Klaus Moeller said GE's contract termination is improper under the contracts and injunctive relief is necessary to prevent irreparable harm to the project. So what is this disagreement all about? Well, the case turns on a contract provision known as a, quote, set-off, S-E-T-O-F-F, set-off, end quote, which allows one company to withhold payments if the other owes money. According to the filing, an independent project engineer has determined that GE owes Vineyard Wind about $853 million, largely tied to delays and defects. Based on that, Vineyard Wind has withheld $308,051,124 from payments that would otherwise have gone to GE, a figure that exactly matches the unpaid payment certificates GE now claims are overdue. Even after those withholdings, Vineyard Wind claims GE still owes about $545 million. Under Vineyard Wind's interpretation, the set-offs reduce the amount due to zero, meaning GE has no legal basis to end the contracts, and GE disputes that interpretation and argues the withheld payments still count as unpaid under the contract. So what really has gone wrong? Well, much of the dispute stems from a cascade of manufacturing and equipment failures that Vineyard Wind says set the project back nearly 2 years and caused more than $1 billion in damages. The most dramatic incident happened in July of 2024 when a turbine blade GE Vernova, manufactured at its factory in Gaspé, Canada, failed and broke apart into the ocean off Nantucket, triggering a large-scale environmental cleanup and forcing a 6-month halt in construction. According to the filing, a subsequent root cause analysis found that 68 of the 72 gas-produced blades installed at the project were defective because they were improperly bonded during manufacturing. Federal regulators required all of them to be removed and replaced with new blades made at a different factory in Cherbourg, France. Vineyard Wind also alleges other performance issues, including earlier delays in producing key components such as foundation and nacelles. A Cape Cod perspective? An expensive blunder? Well, let's see. A different perspective comes from local critics. Suzanne Connolly, chairwoman of the Barnstable-based Save Greater Dowses Beach Citizens Group, said, quote, "Sympathy for this project is hard to come by for those of us who know that the impacts offshore and onshore are bad for the environment, life in the ocean, and for human health and safety." And this entire project has been a massive, expensive blunder from the start, she said. Nantucket-based ACK for Wales, which has its own lawsuits related to Vineyard Wind, said federal permitting allowed Vineyard Wind to proceed recklessly and without real science or concrete data. The citizens group said the project moved forward without safeguards for blade failure fallout or requirements to escrow funds for turbine removal if the project failed or was eventually terminated. Based on the current litigation, the group stated in an April 11 email, quote, "The risks of more damage and a turbine graveyard appear to be looming larger than ever," end quote. "We are hopeful that the end is near for this project as well as the others that are planned off our coast," so said the group of Save Dowses Beach. All right, there you have it. Interesting litigation between Vineyard Wind and GE about the defective equipment and attempting to extract themselves from contracts. This will be an interesting scene to watch as it unfolds in the days ahead, with a hearing slated for this Thursday. We now move on to page 3, the Cape and Islands page, where I'd say 7/8 of that page are taken up with pictures and advertisements, but there is one small article, which I'll read to you now, and it says this: Chipotle coming to Mashpee's South Cape Village. This article is written by Denise Coffey of the Cape Cod Times Network, and underneath the headline is a picture of the nearly complete building. Under the picture, it says a new building is under construction in the South Cape Village in Mashpee, expected to house Chipotle. And here's the article. Custom-made burritos, bowls, and tacos are coming to Mashpee. Bring on the carnitas and cilantro lime sauce, pinto beans, and roasted chili corn salsa. Construction of a Chipotle Mexican grill, known for its customizable menu, is underway at South Cape Village Commercial Shopping Center in Mashpee. An official opening date has not yet been announced. The 2,396 square foot, 44-seat Mexican fast casual restaurant at the intersection of Charles Street and South Street in the shopping center will have a 330-square-foot patio for outdoor seating as well. It joins Roach Brothers, Home Goods, Mattress Warehouse, and Marshall's in the 25-acre parcel that houses 160,000 square feet of commercial space. The South Cape Village project received approval decades ago. The site was designed, approved, and constructed as a retail shopping center through a special permit from the Mashpee Planning Board in May of 2001. Numerous modifications have been made to the plan since then. The original building at the Chipotle site was for a 4,860 square foot Sherwin-Williams store with space for another commercial tenant. The most recent modification of the special permit was the reduction of a two-tenant building to a one-tenant 2,396 square foot restaurant, according to Mashpee Town Planner Brian Tobin. The reduction has done little to quell concerns about possible traffic impacts because of developments nearby. A Trader Joe's grocery store is being proposed on a 4-acre lot almost directly opposite of Chipotle on Route 28. The project is now before the planning board. If a Trader Joe's is built, it will be open 7 days a week and have parking for 139 vehicles. Construction is also underway at Mashpee Commons on a 54 and 1/2 three-bedroom apartments near Market Street and Jobs Fishing Road. An additional Chapter 40B proposal with 65 units on less than 2 acres is proposed at the corner of Jobs Fishing Road and Route 28. The restaurant will use municipal water and a privately operated wastewater treatment facility, according to a document prepared by Pesci Engineering and Associates. But it's the question of traffic that concerns many people. Chipotle is well situated to reap the rewards of any increase in traffic. So there you have it, the new Chipotle building in Mashpee. And it is near completion as I saw it today, as I passed it on my way here into the studio. Coming along very nicely, I might add. All right, friends, at this point, let's take a look at the lottery results, the most recent results, many of which come from yesterday's drawing. But we'll look first at the two big ones, those being the Mega Millions and the Powerball drawings. Currently, Mega Millions has a jackpot of $120 million. The next drawing will be held today at 11 p.m. this evening. Going back to Friday, the 10th of April, we have the winning numbers from that drawing, and they are these: 3, 18, 36, 42, 49, and a mega ball of 6. Again, last Friday's mega ball winning numbers: 3, 18, 36, 42, 49, and 6. Moving on to Powerball, the jackpot is only, and I say only with tongue-in-cheek, $58 million. The winning numbers drawn from yesterday, Monday the 13th of April, are these: 38, 43, 59, 63, 64, and a Powerball of 15. 38, 43, 59, 63, 64, and a Powerball of 15. The next drawing for Powerball will be held tomorrow at 11 p.m. Looking now at some of the other lottery drawings, first the Millionaire for Life drawing, which provides $1 million a year for a winner for life. The next drawing is today at 11:15 this evening. The winning numbers from yesterday, the 13th of April, are these: 2, 13, 15, 35, 41, and a millionaire ball of 2. 2, 13, 15, 35, 41, and a millionaire ball of 2. Mega Bucks. Those numbers drawn yesterday, the winning numbers are these: 1, 10, 11, 24, 36, and 40. Mega Bucks yesterday: 1, 10, 11, 24, 36, and 40. The numbers game will be our last referenced drawing today. The midday drawing held again yesterday. The winning numbers were these: 4929. 4929 midday numbers game, and for the evening drawing numbers game held yesterday as well, 8699. 8699 winning numbers for the evening drawing game. And for those of you who continue to play, I say to you as I always do, good luck, players. Well, friends, we are near the halfway point of today's broadcast, and for those of you who follow us regularly, you know that it's typically at this point in the broadcast that we take a look at the various obituaries in today's paper, and today we have just one. It has a dateline of Orleans of Catherine Mary Taylor. Here it is. It's with great sadness that the family of Catherine M. Taylor announces her passing at the age of 92. Catherine was a Boston native, daughter of John and Gladys Kane. She graduated from St. Joseph High School in Brighton, Mass., and received her Bachelor's of Arts from Regis College. She continued on to earn a Master's in Education from Boston University. Catherine had a 40-year-long career as a beloved classroom teacher and a reading specialist in the Boston public schools. She had a love for education and positively impacted numerous students throughout her career. Above all, her family was her greatest joy. Both Karen and John were her whole world, and they took immense pride in raising their children. There was no place Catherine loved more than being on Cape Cod, starting as when she was a child. And there is a lovely picture of her at a Cape Cod beach along with this obituary. During her retirement, Catherine made new friends through water aerobics classes and enjoyed time with dear friends as a season ticket holder for the Cape Cod Playhouse. She was always up for taking a ride around the Cape to see the sights, especially if it included a stop for a lobster roll and anything chocolate. Catherine was proud of her Irish heritage and immensely enjoyed 2 family trips to Ireland, where she visited the birthplace of her grandparents outside of Galway. Catherine was predeceased by her husband, and that husband James H. Taylor, and is survived by her daughter Karen Taylor Stone of Milton and son John Taylor of Brewster and sister Patricia Gardner of Concord. The family thanks Standish Village for the companionship Catherine received toward the end of her life. A funeral mass in celebration of Catherine's life will be held at a future date. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the Friends of the Snow Library or a charity of one's choice. All right, there you have it, friends. The obituary of Catherine Mary Taylor, Taylor, of Orleans. Included in today's picture, and I'm simply making reference of this, are 10 pictures of various young men and women as they attended the Monomoy Regional High School senior prom. Very attractive young men and women, and that they are a credit to their school, I am sure. Very nice pictures indeed. Well, we will now turn to the national news, and of course Trump is in the news, sometimes good, many times bad, but this article, next one, is on the bad side. It is headlined, Trump disparages Pope after remarks on the Iran war. This is a USA Today article. A tacit agreement between President Trump and Pope Leo XIV broke out into the open on April 12th when Trump lashed out at the Pope over the pontiff's criticism of the U.S.-Israel war with Iran, and then posted a photo depicting himself as Jesus on his Truth Social website. The Pope has been vocal about his opposition to the war for weeks now, imploring on Easter Sunday, quote, "Let those who have weapons lay them down. Let those who have power to unleash war choose peace," end quote. Trump called the Pope weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. "I don't want a Pope who criticizes the President of the United States because I'm doing exactly what I was elected to do, in a landslide," in caps he posted, to do. Trump wrote in a Truth Social post, "Leo should get his act together as Pope, use common sense, stop catering to the radical left, and focus on being a great Pope, not a politician. At a recent meeting the Chicago-born pontiff had with David Axelrod, an advisor to former President Barack Obama, he also appears to have irked Trump. Leo's weak on crime, weak on nuclear weapons does not sit well with me, nor does the fact that he meets with Obama sympathizers like David Axelrod, a loser from the left, Trump wrote on Truth Social. The AI, that's artificial intelligence, generated photo of Trump posted on his Truth Social platform showed him in a white robe with his hands on the forehead of a sick man. A U.S. flag waves in the background as a bald eagle flies overhead with surrounding light behind his head and hands. Even some of Trump's strongest supporters, religious conservatives, objected to this post. In what appeared to be a rare concession, the image was removed from Trump's feed within 24 hours. The White House did not immediately respond to questions about the image. "This is gross blasphemy," said Brilliant Hollyhan, former chair of the Republican National Committee's Youth Advisory Council, on a social media network. "Faith is not a prop. You don't need to portray yourself as a savior when your record should speak for itself." Megan Basham, a writer for the conservative Daily Wire media company and self-described unabashed church lady, said on social media that Trump should ask for forgiveness from the American people and then from God. The Pope addressed Trump's comments as he spoke to reporters on a flight from Rome to Algeria, saying he was not afraid. "I have no fear of the Trump administration or speaking out loudly of the message of the gospel, which is what I believe I'm here to do," he said. "I do not look at my role as being political or as a politician. I don't want to get into a debate with him. I don't think that the message of the gospel is meant to be abused in any way that some people are doing." Asked for his thoughts on the president's Truth Social comments, the pontiff said, "It's ironic, the name of the site itself. Say no more." Catholics on social media lambasted Trump for attacking the leader of the 1.4 billion member Catholic Church. Archbishop Paul S. Coakley, president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, said he was disheartened by Trump's comments. The Pope continued his urging for peace at the first stop of a multi-country African tour on April the 13th. Here's another article involving Trump on the same page. It says, "Judge tosses Trump suit versus the Wall Street Journal." This is a USA Today article, and underneath the headline is a note with the picture of a woman's torso, allegedly written to Jeffrey Epstein, purportedly written by Donald Trump, and it's displayed during a House committee hearing last September the 17th. And here's the article. A judge on April 13th, that's yesterday, dismissed President Donald Trump's defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal for alleging he sent disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein a lewd birthday note. But it's likely to be just a bump in the road. The judge said Trump may amend the lawsuit and refile it within 2 weeks, and a spokesperson for Trump's legal team said he would do so. The ruling turned on whether Trump had made allegations in his lawsuit that, if true, would mean the newspaper definitely defamed him in a July 17 story reporting he had sent the late sex offender a cryptic but lewd letter for his 50th birthday. The letter was one of many collected by Ghislaine Maxwell, a close associate of Epstein's, for a 2003 birthday album. That reported by the Wall Street Journal, citing documents it had reviewed. The letter had Trump's name and several typewritten lines framed with an outline of a naked woman's body with Donald's signature mimicking pubic hair. Maxwell is serving a 20-year prison sentence for sex trafficking a minor to Epstein. Epstein died in 2019 while awaiting his own sex trafficking trial. He was convicted in 2008 of 2 Florida prostitution crimes, including one involving minors. On the day the article was published, Trump called the letter a fake on social media and vowed to sue the newspaper. The next day, he made good on that promise of suing. However, Florida federal judge Darren Gales ruled that Trump did not make a plausible allegation in his lawsuit and that the Wall Street Journal and its owner, Rupert Murdoch, published the story with actual malice, a legal term referring to publishing something about a public figure while either knowing it's false or acting with a reckless disregard for whether it is actually false. Judge Gales wrote that reporters reached out to Trump for comment beforehand and printed his denial. That allowed readers to decide for themselves what to conclude, cutting against Trump's assertion that the newspaper acted with actual malice, the judge said. The ruling did not address whether the article was true. Gales wrote that Trump is allowed to amend his suit to address the issue and to refile it by April 27th. The newspaper has continued to stand by its reporting. All right, that concludes that particular article. All right, friends, let's divert from the news for just a moment and take a look at the Ask Carolyn columns, where people write in with their issues and problems and asking the allegedly omniscient Carolyn to give them a resolve to their issues. The headline here says, he wants out of his in-laws' annual boring beach vacation. And here's the letter. Dear Carolyn, my husband and I have been married 16 years and have a 5-year-old daughter. We live out west, where he's from, while my family is all on the East Coast. It's hard to see all of them at the same time, but they do a yearly beach trip to a place I grew up going to. It's nostalgic for me, but also the best opportunity for my daughter to see her grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins all together, and the house is paid for by my dad. It isn't the most exciting vacation, but it is relaxing and a good way to stay connected to my family. We told my parents we would not come this summer due to a scheduling conflict, but that has been resolved, and now I am considering going. My husband, however, finds the beach vacation with them to be extremely boring and would like to opt out to save money and vacation time. He says I should still go with our daughter. I feel a bit resentful that he isn't willing to come with us, but I also understand it's not his idea of a good time. I'm torn on whether to push him to come or just enjoy some quality time with my family. He's been pretty good overall about making an effort to see my family in years past. Signed, Family Vacation Feud. Here's Carolyn's response. Dear Family Vacation Feud, if that's what passes for a feud, then I'm bored too. Okay, he's not being super complimentary about it, and solo travel with the child can feel like work, I guess. But I'm just not seeing the outrage or timbrage even. This is your nostalgic place, and these are your special people, and sometimes being released to move solo among emotional touchstones is a gift, especially 16 years into a marriage, when even a sharp sense of self can feel rubbed away at the edges. At least try that framing in your mind before you push him, and consider how the feel might change for your daughter as well to be with those in these living dioramas of your youthful history without the filter of her dad's presence. She may not understand a lot yet, but at 5, she's a sensory sponge. I wouldn't recommend this solo excursion every summer necessarily, not without your husband's commitment elsewhere to maintaining the tie to your family, since that clearly matters to you. You're the one who agreed to root your family on his coast, I take it, and an expensive flight and vacation time plainly and various hassles away from all the people, traditions, and memories you plainly still hold dear. So while I'm glad he's made the effort with your family over the years past, rallying to show up for you does strike me as the least he can do against what you gave up from his comfy home base. In other words, that money and vacation time he saves by opting out of the beach trip perhaps ought to be earmarked for an occasion with your family that wouldn't drive him to disassociate. Nothing personal, other people's families can have that effect. If you hit on a good formula for a different trip, in fact, then make it annual. That way the summer trip could become a special just me and my kid thing. Even on alternate years, you might find special becomes precious like that. Well, there you have it, Carolyn's response. We'll probably never know what happens, but an interesting situation indeed. Well, as you know, most of you may know, the Strait of Hormuz, bordering many Arab countries, especially Iran, has been ordered blockaded by President Trump. This next article is entitled Military Details, Hormuz Blockade. Underneath there is a picture of a big oil ship in the strait, and it says under the picture, negotiations with Iran continue to be tense as the United States imposes a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. The waterway is used to move approximately 1/5 of the world's oil supplies. This is a Reuters News article with a dateline of Houston. And here is the article. The U.S. military on April 13 detailed the boundaries of its Strait of Hormuz blockade, saying it would extend east to the Gulf of Oman and Arabian Sea, while ship trafficking data showed 2 ships turned around in the strait as the blockade went into effect. In a note to seafarers about the blockade that seeks to take control of the strait away from Iran, the U.S. Central Command said, any vessel entering or departing the blockaded area without authorization is subject to interception, diversion, and capture. The blockade will not impede neutral transit passage through the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian destinations. Data from the Marine Traffic Service showed the tanker Rich Starry, which departed Saraja anchorage off the coast of Dubai, heading for China, turned back minutes after approaching the strait, as did a second vessel, the Austria. Those tankers can carry oil and chemicals. However, 2 oil tankers linked to Iran exited the Gulf via the strait ahead of the planned U.S. blockade, shipping data from Kepler and ESEG showed. The tanker Aurora is laden with Iranian oil products, while the New Future tanker these are names of the various tankers, New Future tanker is carrying diesel loaded from the Hamriya port in the United Arab Emirates. They were among at least 8 ships that transited the strait on April 13 before the blockade went into effect. According to Kepler, an oil products tanker that loaded in the United Arab Emirates port and 3 dry bulk ships that left from Iranian ports exited the strait, while 2 Pakistani oil products tankers and 2 dry bulk ships entered the strait. President Trump announced the blockade following the breakdown of weekend talks to end the 6-week-long war between the U.S. and Iran, which has sent oil prices back above $100 a barrel and still on the rise. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, Trump told reporters at the White House. We cannot let a country blackmail or extort the world. Since the United States and Israel began the war on February 28th, Iran effectively shut the Strait of Hormuz to all vessels except its own, saying passage would permitted only under Iranian control and subject to a transit fee. Trump has said Washington would block Iranian vessels and any ships that paid such tolls, and that any Iranian fast attack ships that went near the blockade would be eliminated. The Strait of Hormuz is used to move 20% of the world's oil and gas supplies. The U.S. military note said the blockade would include all of Iran's coastline, but humanitarian shipments, including food, medical supplies, and other essential goods, would be permitted subject to inspection. The immediate effect will be a sharp drop in fresh fixture activity for any voyage with Iran exposure and a broader hesitation even for non-Iran cargoes moving near the strait, said a Dubai-based oil trader. International Maritime Organization Secretary General Arsenio Dominguez told reporters the U.S. blockade would extend a halt to ship traffic in the strait since the conflict began. Dominguez said 20,000 seafarers and around 1,600 vessels were stuck now in the Gulf. This next article is also related to the Middle East, and it says Israeli airstrikes kill 4 in Gaza amid ceasefire talks. This is a Reuters news agency article as well, with a dateline of Cairo, Egypt. Here's the article. Israeli airstrikes killed at least 4 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip on April 13th, health officials said, as mediators met leaders from Hamas to shore up a U.S.-brokered ceasefire deal. Medics said the strike hit a group of men outside a school in Deir al-Balah in the central Gaza Strip, killing 3. Separately, another strike killed 1 person and injured another at a cafe in Gaza City. They added the Israel military did not comment on either incident. At El Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah, the bodies of those killed lay on the ground in white shrouds outside the morgue as relatives and friends arrived to bid them farewell. Some kissed the victims' foreheads before holding special prayer sessions. This is not a truce, it's a trap for our young men. Every day there are martyrs, every single day. How long can this continue? Said Hassam Abu el-Raus, a female relative of one of the victims. Isn't it unjust that a 3-year-old child is afraid of seeing his dead father? He says, my father went to bring me something from the shop, she added. The ceasefire that began last October halted 2 years of full-blown war, but left Israel troops in control of a depopulated zone demarcated by yellow-painted blocks that makes up well over half of Gaza, with Hamas in power in a narrow coastal strip and Israeli airstrikes continuing. More than 750 Palestinians have been killed since the deal took effect, while militants have killed 4 Israeli soldiers. Israel and Hamas have traded blame for the various ceasefire violations. Palestinians say Israeli forces have been moving some of the yellow concrete markers westward to even further deny territory to the Palestinians. Israel denies this, of course. The violence comes as leaders from Hamas and other Palestinian factions have been meeting since April 11th in Cairo, with mediators from Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar there to discuss implementing the second phase of the Gaza deal. Under a plan put forward by President Trump's Board of Peace, Hamas would be required to lay down its arms in stages over 8 months after a U.S.-backed committee of Palestinian technocrats takes control in Gaza. However, Hamas disarmament has been a major obstacle to progress on Trump's ceasefire deal and a plan for Gaza, which have also been put under strain by the war in Iran. Two officials close to the latest talks said Hamas told mediators that discussions on disarmament could only move forward after Israel fully implements the first phase of Trump's October deal, which includes a complete ceasefire in Gaza. Israeli military officials have said they are preparing for a swift return to full-scale war if Hamas does not lay down its weapons. The Gaza war began on October the 7th, 2023, with a Hamas-led attack on Israel that killed 1,200 people, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's ensuing two-year campaign killed more than 72,000 Palestinians, according to Gazan health authorities, and has left the territory mostly in ruins. Well, there's an interesting article in the sports section, which I'm going to read for you now, about Dick Vitale, the legendary sportscaster. The headline says, Vitale announces new health updates. This is, again, a Reuters news agency article, and there's a picture of Dick Vitale broadcasting during a recent game. Here's the article. Dick Vitale's latest biopsy has brought some more bad news. In a statement shared by ESPN's public relations account on X, formerly Twitter, the legendary college basketball analyst announced on Monday, the 13th of April, that results from his biopsy last week did confirm a diagnosis of melanoma in both his lungs and liver cavity. I've beaten melanoma, I've beaten lymphoma, I've beaten vocal cord cancer, and I've beaten lymph node cancer. I'm 4 for 4, and I'm fully confident I'm going to make it 5 for 5, Vitale wrote in a statement. Dick Vitale said he'll soon be starting immunotherapy treatment and plans on winning this latest health battle of his. He also said he's feeling fantastic amid the diagnosis. Last week, Vitale shared that he underwent a biopsy in a hospital in Sarasota to look into some of the abnormalities that his doctors found on a series of recent routine tests, included a PET scan, CAT scan, and 2 MRIs. He shared a social media post late Sunday night that he hasn't been able to sleep recently, and he's been so worried about the report, adding that his PET scan last week shocked him. Vitale has had multiple health issues, including several types of cancer over the last few years. He was declared cancer-free last year and made his return to broadcasting most recently in the first 4 game between Texas and North Carolina State. I am truly overwhelmed by the love, support, prayers, and messages I've received from so many people, Vitale said in a statement on Monday. I'm incredibly blessed to have my family beside me and my ESPN family, led by Chairman Jimmy Pitaro, and it has been absolutely terrific. Their support has inspired me to keep fighting, and I will do everything in my power to win yet another battle with cancer. So we wish Dick Vitale well. He's certainly had his share of bad news and bad health lately. Well, friends, with this being such a nice spring day, I'd like to end today's broadcast with a couple quotes about spring. This first one is by Anne Bradstreet. It says, "If we had no winter, the spring would not be so pleasant." And today is indeed a pleasant day, and yes, we definitely had a winter. So we are all the more appreciative of days like today. This next one's by Stuart Brown. It is "The first blooms of spring," which we are about to experience, folks. "The first blooms of spring always make my heart sing." And finally, this one by Harriet Jacobs. "The beautiful spring has come, and when nature resumes her loveliness, the human soul is apt to revive also." Certainly my soul is reviving as I enjoy a day like today. Well, friends, it's time to sign off. From the Audible Local Ledger here in Mashpee, Massachusetts, this has been Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, reading to you today and every Tuesday. It's been my pleasure indeed. And until next Tuesday, please, friends, stay happy and healthy, and so long for now.